As we were brainstorming at staff meeting this week about a Wonder Box story for today, Ben shared an idea for a Wonder Box about how a supernova works. If that sounds exciting to you, don't worry. I think he's going to do it on the 29th, so come back then. As he was describing the way that a supernova works, I was trying really hard to listen and take it all in, because I thought it might be the perfect thing for this week. But about 4 sentences in, he started using words like endothermic and exothermic, and my mind just glazed over. And I couldn't bring myself to pay attention to the details. I really wanted to, because Ben was so clearly passionate and excited about it, and I wanted to share in that. But in my heart of hearts, I just don't actually care about how... True confessions. I just don't actually care about how a supernova works. Ben was trying to share this thing with me that he finds great awe in, and I was totally taken in by his passion, but trying to understand the mechanics of a supernova was just never the thing that was going to spark awe in me. The confessions are going to keep coming. Here's my confession. I personally do not find joy or wonder or awe or even all that much satisfaction in understanding the details of how our world works. Because of this, there are days when I put it really simply, and I just say that I hate science. I know they're going to kick me out of being a UU, right? But that's not really true. I find the fact that our world works totally incredible. And I just have very little desire to hear explanations about how it works. Science is, on the one hand, totally amazing. And the details of science really bore me. Now, last year around this time, our theme for the month was mystery. And I preached a sermon about finding wonder in mystery. I talked about not knowing everything and not understanding everything and finding awe in that place of not knowing. And afterwards, a few of you mentioned that actually you find wonder and awe in knowing and understanding. That the details of how our world works are what you find so amazing about this world. And I thought, yes, of course. That's absolutely a source of wonder. And so this year, when the theme of awe came around, I figured I should face my hatred of science head on and preach a science sermon. But confession number 3, I don't think that I've written a science sermon. This is not actually an awe in science sermon. You may have to come back for that on the 29th, maybe. Instead, I want to talk about the dichotomy of science and mystery, and why, like so many binaries in our world, it may be more harmful than helpful. As I was looking around for readings about awe and science, I came across one of my least favorite writers on the topic, Christopher Hitchens. The piece I found was a 4-minute excerpt from a series of debates that Hitchens had done with conservative Christian theologian and pastor named Douglas Wilson. The 4 minutes featured Hitchens offering what some have called a secular sermon on awe. It was very typical of my experience of Hitchens in that he'd say one thing that I was totally on board with, and then follow it up with another statement that I found horrendously offensive and pompous. So let me give you just a little taste of his argument. He said, "If you want to be awe-inspired, let me just tell you that those of us who do not believe we are divinely created, let alone divinely supervised, are not immune to the idea of awe and beauty and the transcendent. Let me invite you to look for a moment at the pictures taken by the Hubble telescope, which he then showed. The extraordinary revelations of swirling yet somehow beautiful new galaxies in color and depth, in majesty, like nothing I think the human eye has ever seen. Turn away from that if you wish and gaze at a burning bush in an illiterate part of the Middle East and say that's where revelation comes from. I don't believe you'd be able to do it, he says. Or read a page of Stephen Hawking on the absolute magnificence and consistency and underlying beauty. As Einstein says, the great miracle of physics is that there are not miracles. It all carries on holding together all the time. There are not interruptions in this order. There are not suspensions of it just to please Joshua or just to please some sect or tribal group. No, it is much, much more impressive than that. There's so much truth in this short excerpt. No one is immune to the idea of awe or beauty or transcendence. And the consistency and order of the natural world is absolutely awe-inspiring. But the derision with which Hitchens speaks about religion and religious beliefs always turns me off to whatever else he has to say. What does wonder at the beauty of our world and the way the world, why does wonder at the beauty of our world and the way the world works have to come at the expense of someone else's wonder at something different? To be fair, I haven't listened to the 6-hour debate. I haven't listened to the other side of the debate at all. And I'm actually pretty sure that I would disagree with Douglas Wilson just as much, if not more, than I disagree with Hitchens. But I just can't stand the hubris he displays in this excerpt on awe. Later in the clip, he berates Wilson and religious people in general for their certainty about the world and their intolerance of skepticism. I think the same accusations could be leveled at Hitchens himself. His own intolerance seems like an echo of that which he preaches against. And all of this leads me to wonder, what good does it do any of us to proclaim what anyone else should find, where anyone else should find wonder and awe? And this is probably why I'm a Unitarian Universalist. This is kind of what we're all about, after all. I'm not here to tell you where to find awe. I might be here to remind you to look for awe or to offer support if you're struggling to find it, but I don't get to tell you what you are and are not allowed, when you are and are not allowed to feel wonder, or to suggest that one type of wonder is better than any other. Ben, I'm so glad that you find the mechanics of a supernova awe-inspiring. I'm so glad. And I am sure that you are by far not the only one in this room. Am I right? Yes. That's what I get applause for. Okay, good. And I'm grateful, Ben, and all of you who applauded, that you don't judge me for glazing over when you pull out those endothermic and exothermic reactions. At least I'm assuming you don't. Am I right there, too? Thank you. We can connect. We can connect over our common experiences of awe and wonder, even if those experiences don't always come from the same source. And this is why I love that story that we did end up choosing for the Wonder Box that Ben shared with us about the mystic and the scientist. We so often think that we can categorize people into types based on where they find awe and wonder. In some ways, this is the root of the atheist-theist debate. We think that we can put people in boxes, right? that there are rational people and mystical people, that there are those who make decisions with their heads and those who make decisions with their hearts, that there are those who believe in science and there are those who believe in God. And the story of the mystic and the scientist breaks down those dichotomies. Each of them thinks about the world in very different ways. And yet they end up answering that question about God in the same way. I do not know what you mean by the word God, but I do know that this world is more mysterious and more wonderful than I could ever imagine. I know that you and I are a part of something so much larger than our own lives. Perhaps this something larger is what you seek. The two quotes that we've heard from Albert Einstein also push the dichotomy between science and mystery into question and remind us that not only do we get to choose where we find wonder, we're also allowed to find it in more than one place. On the one hand, Einstein says that the great miracle of physics is that there are no miracles. And on the other hand, he says, the most beautiful thing that we can experience is the mysterious. At first glance, these two statements might seem to be opposed to each other, and yet they come from one brilliant mind. The beauty of Unitarian Universalism is that we say that you can find awe in both, in all, in anything. In the knowing and the not knowing, in the great mystery and in the complex order of things, and in everything in between. We don't declare a proper source for awe and wonder. We simply acknowledge that this world is more mysterious and more wonderful than we could ever imagine. We know that we are part of something that is so much bigger than each of our individual lives. And we are awestruck by that something larger, whether or not we ever know its name. May it be so.